Adam Schiff recently informed Senator John Kennedy he possessed no ethical authority to interrogate anybody, claiming Kennedy acted purely as a MAGA tool involved in the politicization of public institutions. Kennedy took a drink of coffee, placed his cup down, opened the largest folder upon his table, and asked Schiff a single query. Senator, when you informed America you possessed more than circumstantial proof of Russian collusion, were you lying? Adam Schiff never recovered from this inquiry. Hit that like button since you are about to watch a 4-year-old rural attorney from Louisiana, equipped with merely public documents, a yellow legal notebook, and a coffee cup stating, "Don't mess with taxpayers," methodically dismantle the politician who spent 7 years informing America he possessed proof that never materialized. No yelling, no drama, merely receipts for every single one of them. The Senate Judiciary Committee session began at 10, 0 inches the morning within the Dirksen building. The announced subject was congressional oversight, integrity, and institutional accountability. Every major network broadcast it live. C-SPAN offered double feeds. The viewing gallery had standing room exclusively, and staffers lined the rear wall 3 deep. Senator Adam Schiff entered the way ex-prosecutors enter spaces they assume they control. Posture straight, pace steady, gaze forward, with the slightest hint of a grin engineered to exude calm authority. He donned a dark blue suit, a light blue tie, and the look of an individual who had survived reprimand, survived Trump, survived everything Washington had tossed his way, and returned as a United States Senator. Kennedy rested in his customary position behind the raised desk, reading spectacles resting on his nose, his thick yellow legal pad already displaying 3 pages of handwritten scribbles. His coffee cup was placed precisely so the lenses could capture it, alongside a pile of folders organized by colored markers, red, blue, green, orange, and one unlabeled black folder resting separately from the rest like a loaded firearm awaiting its opportunity. Schiff's introductory speech lasted 4 minutes, refined and practiced, each phrase weighed like a judicial brief. He labeled the proceeding a continuation of the MAGA scheme to weaponize legislative oversight. He stated Kennedy embodied the degradation of institutional traditions. He portrayed himself as an individual who had devoted his profession to responsibility and the rule of law. His tone never shook, his fingers never shifted. He was an individual acting out competence, and the execution was flawless. Kennedy jotted 3 words upon his legal notepad. He underlined them doubly. When Schiff concluded, a smattering of clapping arose from the Democratic aisle. 2 liberal reporters in the media gallery traded pleased glances. On social networks, snippets of Schiff's criticism were already being prepared for circulation. Kennedy shifted his reading spectacles, consumed a slow drink of coffee, and placed the cup down with the intentional caution of a gentleman who realized that quietness, correctly utilized, was more deafening than any monologue. Senator Schiff, he stated, elongating the syllables the way Louisiana elongates summer. Thank you for those words, truly eloquent. I tallied. Let me review my notes. 6 allegations against me within 4 minutes. That is efficient, extremely lawyerly. He unsealed the primary folder. Now, you brought up accountability. I would like to discuss that because, as we declare in Louisiana, the term accountability resembles a boomerang. You toss it towards someone else, and if you aren't cautious, it returns right back and strikes you in the teeth. He peered at Schiff above the edge of his spectacles. Let us discover if yours has returned yet. Kennedy opened the crimson folder. Inside, marked and color-coordinated, was a chronology that spanned from March 2017 until June 2023, 6 years of public declarations, broadcast transcripts, and confidential committee files organized in temporal sequence. Senator Schiff, on the 22nd of March 2017, you showed up on MSNBC alongside Chuck Todd. Mr. Todd inquired if the argument for Trump-Russia collusion was circumstantial. Do you recall your response? Schiff's stance remained unchanged. His visage stayed firm, displaying the rehearsed neutrality of a guy who had fielded hostile inquiries for 7 years. I remember the conversation, yes. Excellent, because I hold the transcript exactly here. Kennedy elevated a typed sheet, the pertinent section illuminated in yellow. You stated, and I am citing exactly, "Actually, no, Chuck. I can assure you that the case is more than that, and I cannot delve into the details, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now." Kennedy placed the sheet down and grabbed another. December 2017, CNN. You informed the American public that collusion was, and I cite, fact. You claimed the Russians proposed assistance, the campaign embraced the assistance, the Russians provided assistance, and the president took full advantage of that assistance. He gazed upward. That is not prevaricating, Senator. That is not expressing worries. That is an active member of Congress possessing clearance to the highest level sensitive data in the nation, telling 330 million citizens that the Commander-in-Chief of the United States collaborated with an overseas adversary, and you stated it like you were announcing the forecast. Schiff's left hand shifted to his lap, his right pointer finger knocked the testimony desk, once a tiny motion, almost imperceptible, yet the C-SPAN zoom lens captured it. Kennedy flipped the sheet. Now, here is where it becomes intriguing. In May 2020, the House Intelligence Committee published 57 transcripts of witness interrogations from your Russia probe. 57. And those records conveyed a drastically different narrative than the one you had been sharing on television. He extracted a dense pile of papers and elevated it for the lenses. James Clapper, Chief of National Intelligence during President Obama, not a Republican, not a Trump backer. Barack Obama's intelligence director, he swore under oath in front of your committee that he had not witnessed proof of collusion. Under oath. Senator Kennedy placed Clapper's document down and grabbed a different one. Loretta Lynch, Attorney General of the United States during President Obama, swore she was oblivious to evidence proving collusion. Another paper. Sally Yates, Deputy Attorney General, identical response. Another, Susan Rice, National Security Advisor, identical response. He distributed the documents across the desk like a casino dealer presenting a defeated hand. 4 of the most ranking national security executives in the Obama government, the individuals who would understand if collusion occurred since they managed the departments probing it, all 4 swore under oath in front of your committee that they did not observe proof of collusion. Kennedy stared at Schiff. You possessed these records, Senator. You held them while you were appearing on CNN and MSNBC, informing America you possessed more than circumstantial proof. You realized what your personal witnesses stated, and you declared the reverse. Schiff tilted forward slightly. Senator, context is important. The proof of Russian meddling in the 2016 race was, I did not inquire about meddling. Kennedy's tone did not elevate. It actually fell half a pitch, which caused it to hit heavier. Meddling and collusion are 2 distinct terms. You attended Harvard Law School. You comprehend the distinction. Every first-year legal scholar comprehends the distinction. Russia meddled. No one argues that. The issue is if the Trump team collaborated with them, and your personal witnesses, Obama's staff, not Trump, stated they did not witness it. Kennedy grabbed one additional paper, and then there is the Mueller document. 22 months, 40 FBI operatives, 500 testifiers, 2,800 summons, $30 million, and the finding he recited deliberately. The inquiry did not confirm that members of the Trump campaign collaborated or synced with the Russian administration. Those are Robert Mueller's phrases, Senator, not mine, not Fox News. Robert Mueller, he shut the crimson folder. The click of the lid echoed across the session chamber like a judge's mallet. In the audience, a veteran Marine in the 3rd row, sporting a gray flat top and American flag pin, shifted forward and rested his forearms on his legs. A CNN director in the press area entered something on her mobile, deleted it, and retyped. Behind Schiff, his chief of staff had ceased recording notes completely. Her writing instrument laid upon the paper untouched, as if recording anything would render it more factual. But you kept asserting it, even post-Mueller, even following your personal documents, even after the Durham report detailed how the entire conspiracy narrative was created, bankrolled, and distributed by Trump's political rivals. Kennedy moved his head slowly. Do you realize what we term that in Louisiana, Senator? He did not await a reply. We term it lying, not misspeaking, not offering context, lying. You informed the American public a detail you understood was false, and you executed it from a role of profound trust because you were the head of the intelligence panel. And citizens trusted you because they believed you held access to classified info they lacked. Kennedy extracted one last paper from the folder, a lone sheet printed in larger text than the rest. This is an internal panel document dated February 2018, created by your own minority crew. It dictates, and I am reciting from the paper, current proof does not corroborate the public portrayal of direct collusion. Suggest modifying messaging to match evidentiary reality. He elevated it. Your personal staff instructed you to cease in text, and you refused. Schiff's left hand located his marriage band. His thumb and index finger initiated a sluggish spin, automatic, regular, the initial bodily signal of a human whose inner mechanism was processing something it refused to process. Senator Schiff, if someone in Louisiana informed his community for 3 years that the guy down the street was thieving livestock, and then it emerged the guy never took a single bovine, and then it emerged the accuser realized it the entire period, well, Kennedy lifted his coffee cup. We would possess some queries for the accuser, wouldn't we? Senator, I defend the validity of course you do. Kennedy took a drink. Individuals always defend what they stated. It is defending what is factual that is tougher, proceeding to the subsequent topic. Kennedy unsealed the blue folder. He performed it slowly, as if the sheets inside weighed heavier than documents ought to. Senator Schiff, the 26th of September 2019, you led a session of the House Intelligence Committee. Interim Director of National Intelligence, Joseph McGuire, was your testifier. The topic was the whistleblower grievance regarding President Trump's telephone conversation with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Schiff's stance was yet erect, but the wrinkle between his brows had grown deeper. His blinking frequency, which C-SPAN's lenses monitored whether he desired them to or otherwise, had escalated from its normal rate. The executive mansion had published the record of that conversation the prior day. Every citizen with an internet link could review it. Every reporter possessed it. Every congressional member possessed it. Kennedy lifted a typed duplicate of the record. This is what the commander-in-chief genuinely stated. He placed it on the left portion of his table. Then he elevated a separate paper. And this is what you informed the American public, the president stated. He placed it on the right side, 2 papers beside each other. You gazed into the lens, Senator. You seemed to be reciting from the document, and you stated, quote, I have a favor I desire from you, and I'm going to state this merely 7 times, so you better hear well. I want you to fabricate dirt on my electoral rival. Comprehend? Plenty of it on this and on that. Kennedy stared at Schiff above his spectacles. The president never uttered any of that. Not a single term. You fabricated it. You created dialogue and showcased it to the American public as if it were the president's genuine terms. That was obviously a rhetorical. You did not state it was rhetorical. You did not say, I am going to summarize for theatrical impact. You sat in the head seat, you stared at the lens, and you recited invented phrases as if they were genuine. Congressman Mike Turner had to halt you. Somebody messaged him during your address and inquired, is he merely inventing this? And the reply was, yes. Kennedy extracted a printed image. When Turner challenged you, you responded, and I possess it exactly here. My overview of the president's conversation was intended to be at least partly in parody. Parody. Kennedy allowed the term to linger. The head of the House Intelligence Committee invented presidential quotes during an impeachment proceeding and labeled it parody. The session chamber was completely quiet. A camera mechanism snapped from the media gallery, a lone snap that echoed like a snapping bone. But that isn't even the most humiliating aspect. Kennedy proceeded, delving further into the blue folder. April 2017, you acquired a telephone conversation. The dialer introduced himself as Andriy Parubiy, the head of the Ukrainian legislature. He informed you the Russian state possessed scandalous pictures of President Trump, nude pictures. Kennedy stopped precisely long enough for the term to sink in. You didn't terminate the call. You heated for 8 minutes. You debated the specifics with clear intrigue, and then you informed the dialer, I possess the transcript of this conversation because it has been public since 2018. Clearly, we would embrace the opportunity to acquire copies of those tapes, and you instructed your personnel to pursue it, which they executed the following day. He lifted the contact record. The issue, Senator, is that Andrei Perubi was actually a pair of Russian jokers named Vovan and Lexus. They are expert pranksters. They have deceived politicians, diplomats, and stars. But you, the ranking official of the House Intelligence Committee, the guy accountable for supervising America's whole intelligence machine, you were so starved for scandal on the president that you wasted 8 minutes debating naked pictures with a pair of jokers posing as Ukrainian. Schiff's grin, the expert, media-ready grin that had transported him through 1,000 adversarial discussions, had vanished. In its spot remained a narrow, flat crease, the look of a visage attempting extremely hard to convey nothing. Your personnel pursued these jokers no fewer than 4 times before they recognized the origin was fraudulent, Kennedy noted, lifting contact records. 4 interactions. You dispatched government staff to chase evidence from an origin you never authenticated. And you are the guy who led the intelligence panel. Kennedy placed down the records. So permit me to ensure I am following this accurately, Senator. You could not discover genuine proof of collusion, so you informed America you possessed it anyway. You could not discover genuine remarks from the president's telephone conversation, so you fabricated some. And when a pair of jokers presented you fraudulent, scandalous evidence, you didn't merely listen, you dispatched your staff to retrieve it. He angled his head marginally. A subordinate behind Schiff moved in her seat, the sort of movement that implies, I desire I was anywhere else. In the media section, a journalist from the Associated Press had ceased writing and was merely observing the manner individuals observe a thing they realize they shall recall. In Louisiana, we possess a proverb, a guy who will trust a tall tale will share one too. You trusted the tall tale, Senator, and then you shared a couple of your own. Kennedy shut the blue folder and grabbed the green one. His speed had altered slower currently, more intentional, the cadence of a guy nearing the segment of the narrative that entailed funds. Senator Schiff, let us discuss property. Everybody enjoys discussing property. Schiff's right palm shifted to the desk surface. Digits expanded as if he was examining something that had moved beneath him. You possess a residence in Burbank, California. Your constituency, your region, the region you served in Congress for 24 years and currently serve in the Senate. Is that accurate? Yes. And you possess a residence in Potomac, Maryland. Pleasant community. A large number of congressional members reside out there. Is that additionally accurate? Yes, numerous members. I am not inquiring regarding other members. I am inquiring regarding you. Kennedy extracted a document. This is a sworn statement you authorized in 2011. It is a loan paper for your Maryland real estate. On this paper, you attested under threat of perjury that your Potomac house was your main domicile. He placed it down on the left section of his table. Then he extracted a different paper. This is an election document from the equivalent time frame. On this document, you designated yourself as an inhabitant of Burbank, California, because you were required to. You were campaigning for Congress in California, and you had to reside in the region you served. He placed it on the right section. 2 documents, equivalent time frame. One states Maryland is your main domicile. The alternative states California. Both display your title on them. Both display your autograph. Kennedy gazed at Schiff the way a rural physician examines a radiograph he has observed previously. Senator, you can reside in a couple of places, I comprehend that, but you can merely possess one main domicile. That is not my regulation. That is the financial institution's regulation. That is the IRS's regulation. That is the law's regulation. He turned to the subsequent sheet. The Federal Housing Finance Agency Chief Pete submitted a recommendation to Attorney General Bondi in May of 2025. He recorded, and I am citing, Mr. Adambe. Schiff has in numerous situations falsified banking papers and property filings to secure better credit conditions. Those are severe terms, Senator. Falsified. That is not a partisan claim. That is an economic felony accusation. Schiff's throat had begun to flush. The color escalated from beneath his neckline, sluggish and observable, the flesh revealing what the visage was striving to hide. He coughed, grabbed his hydration glass, consumed. This is not political, Senator. This is mathematics. Your Maryland loan was renegotiated on the 6th of February, 2009. At that moment, you claimed the estate as your main domicile and obtained a reduced mortgage percentage thusly. Main domicile percentages are usually a 0.5% to 0.75% cheaper than investment property percentages. Over 11 years of installments, that discrepancy equates to roughly $147,000. Kennedy scribbled the figure upon his legal notepad, $147,000. That is the amount the American financial structure sponsored your loan because you stated you resided there when you did not. You resided in California, you served California, you cast ballots in California, but your lender assumed you resided in Maryland. Schiff's tone emerged steady but weaker than it had sounded. This issue has been extensively covered as a politically driven probe. The U.S. prosecutor in Maryland has signaled the probe is active, Senator, not shut, active. A dedicated prosecutor has been designated. Grand jury hearings are ongoing. Kennedy struck the document. And the query is not if the probe is partisan. The query is whether your autograph is on these papers. Is it? Silence. I will interpret that as a yes, because it is. I possess the papers, Senator. Your autograph, your title, your pair of contrasting tales regarding where you reside. Kennedy tilted backward. Somewhere behind Schiff, a subordinate's mobile vibrated, a message perhaps from a public relations squad monitoring the broadcast from a different space, perhaps featuring the terms damage control. Schiff did not swivel around. He remained extremely unmoving, the manner individuals sit when they realize that every motion will be analyzed. In Louisiana, we possess a term for informing the lender one detail and the state another, multiple terms actually. Fraud is the courteous one. Kennedy reached for the orange folder. He unsealed it with reduced formality, then the remainder, swifter, almost nonchalant, which somehow rendered it appear more threatening. Senator Schiff, I desire to discuss a guy titled Ed Buck. The title dropped into the session chamber like a pebble released into calm liquid. Schiff's left hand, which had been spinning his marriage band in a consistent cadence, halted. Ed Buck was a notable Democratic contributor in your region, West Hollywood, California. He donated to your electoral fund $2,700 in 2016. He additionally donated to Hillary Clinton, Governor Newsom, and scores of other Democrats throughout California. Kennedy extracted a picture, a public image from a partisan gathering. Buck positioned in a gathering of California Democrats. You recognized him. You participated in gatherings at which he was present. He was part of the contributor network in your region. I gifted those funds to philanthropy after his capture, Schiff stated, his tone having regained a portion of its expert pitch, but it was functioning at a sharper level than it had commenced the day. After his capture, Kennedy reiterated, in September 2019, let us discuss what occurred prior to his capture. He extracted judicial records the 27th of July 2017. Gemma Moore, 26 years of age, was discovered lifeless in Ed Buck's flat. Narcotic toxicity, methamphetamine. The medical examiner initially judged it unintentional. Kennedy placed down the file. The 7th of January 2019. Timothy Dean, 55 years of age, discovered lifeless in the identical flat, identical conditions. Methamphetamine. Ed Buck's residence. 2 guys lifeless in the identical guy's flat, identical narcotic, identical conditions, 18 months separating them, and Buck was not detained until a third casualty almost perished in September 2019. Kennedy stared at Schiff. Buck was eventually found guilty of 9 federal crimes, supplying of illegal narcotics leading to fatality, 2 charges. He was ordered to 30 years in National Penitentiary. The proof indicated he attracted unhoused black males to his flat with narcotics, shot them with methamphetamine, and exploited them for erotic motives. Attorneys stated he handled humans like throwaway items. The session chamber was quiet. A couple of individuals in the audience stared at the ground. Senator, you acquired contributor funds from this guy. You participated in gatherings linked to his friend group. The initial guy perished in July 2017. You did not refund the funds until September 2019, 26 months post-event. A second guy perished in January 2019. And still you maintained the funds. It required a third casualty and a national capture before you moved. Kennedy extracted a solicitation itinerary, internal event timetables from California Democratic loops. Contributor gatherings in the West Hollywood sector connected to Buck's Friend Network proceeded throughout 2018. Your campaign's attendance at 3 of these gatherings is recorded in these timetables. Schiff's brow had formed a thin gloss beneath the chamber bulbs. It reflected the neon brightness, and the C-SPAN high-definition lenses, ruthless in their clarity, broadcast it to every display in America. I am not charging you of comprehending what Buck executed behind locked entryways, Senator. I wish to be transparent concerning that. But I am questioning why a legislative member who served on the intelligence panel, a guy who boasted about supervision and responsibility, maintained contributor funds from a guy linked to a couple of fatalities for beyond 2 years. Kennedy transitioned to the reprimand, and then there is the issue of how you process organizational discipline. The 21st of June, 2023, the House of Representatives elected to reprimand you 213 to 209. You were mandated to remain in the pit of the House while the decree was recited aloud. That decree charged you of untruths, distortions, and misuses of classified data. He extracted printed messages. Within hours, Senator, your team dispatched the initial of 36 solicitation messages citing the reprimand. 36. In the period that contained your reprimand, you generated $8.1 million. You labeled it a mark of distinction. Kennedy placed down the messages. You were reprimanded by the Citizens Chamber for deceiving the American populace, and you transformed it into a cash machine. You capitalized on your personal shame. He moved his head sluggishly. Behind Kennedy, Senator Grassley, who had witnessed more proceedings than majority senators had witnessed anniversaries, took off his spectacles and massaged the peak of his nose. It was the motion of a guy who had observed someone wander into an obstacle they ought to have noticed arriving. In Louisiana, when a youth gets directed to the administrator's space, they arrive resident silent. They rest at the cooking table and reflect upon what they committed. They do not vend admissions to the beating. But you, Senator, you vended admissions, you vended snacks, and you dispatched gratitude notes to everyone who acquired 136 messages, $8 million. And you labeled the entire ordeal a mark of distinction. He lifted a single of the printed solicitation messages. This one dispatched the precise day you were reprimanded, the identical day the fluid wasn't parched upon the decree and you were previously requesting cash. The topic text states, "I shall not be hushed." Senator, nobody hushed you. The House of Representatives informed you that you deceived and you transformed it into a promotional scheme. Kennedy shut the orange folder and placed it away. He took off his reading spectacles, collapsed them, and positioned them on the desk. For the initial moment all morning, he conversed without scripts, without papers, without items. Just a guy observing a different guy across a chamber packed with lenses. Senator Schiff, you wandered in here today and labeled me a MAGA implement. You stated, "I embody the politicization of agencies." You framed yourself as the protector of accountability, the sentinel of democratic traditions, the mature one in the space. His tone was softer than it had resonated all morning, which in the mechanics of Kennedy's speech implied it was poised to morph into the most deafening force in the structure. So let us examine the history of the mature one in the space. He elevated a single digit. You informed the American public you possessed more than circumstantial proof of Russian collusion. Your personal witnesses, Obama's DNI, Obama's top attorney, Obama's second AG, Obama's security counselor, each swore under oath that they observed zero such proof. You possessed their statement. You appeared on broadcast and stated the reverse for 3 years. Second digit, you invented remarks from a presidential telephone conversation during an impeachment proceeding. When you were discovered, you termed it parody. The head of the intelligence panel making up presidential speech on live broadcast and terming it a gag when it ceased being humorous. Third digit. You were deceived by two Russian jokers who proposed you naked pictures of the president. You, the guy tasked with safeguarding America's espionage secrets, wasted 8 minutes debating invented blackmail with outsiders and dispatched your personnel to fetch it. 4 subsequent interactions before anyone recognized the origin was fraudulent. Fourth digit, you authorized loan papers claiming 2 distinct territories as your main domicile. The FHFA directed your file to the Attorney General. A dedicated prosecutor has been designated. A grand jury is operational. The probe is active. Fifth digit, the complete palm presently exposed. You maintain contributor funds from a guy convicted of shooting unhoused guys with methamphetamine until 2 individuals were deceased and a third almost perished. And when the House of Representatives reprimanded you for your behavior, you dispatched 36 solicitation messages in a solitary period and termed your personal penalty a mark of distinction. Kennedy permitted his palm to descend. Senator Schiff, you arrived here today to converse regarding accountability. But accountability is not a monologue you deliver. It is not a media briefing you host. Accountability is a looking glass you peer into, and I do not believe you have peered into that looking glass in an extremely extensive time frame. Schiff unsealed his lips. Senator, I have devoted my profession to. What? Kennedy's tone did not elevate. It did not have to. What have you devoted your profession to? Because judging by the proof, your terms, your papers, your autographs, the item you have devoted your profession to is sharing tales that are not factual and benefiting from the outcomes. He grabbed his coffee cup, consumed a slow, controlled drink, placed it down. In Louisiana, we possess a closing tale for moments like this. He eased into the tempo, the classic narrating beat, the tone of front verandas and hearth seats. There was a peafowl that resided on an estate near Baton Rouge. Gorgeous creature, huge rear. Every morning, that peafowl would stroll to the middle of the lawn and open his plumes for everybody to view. The hens would observe, the canines would observe, the ranchers' kids would motion and gaze, and the peafowl adored it. He existed for it. Kennedy paused. But one morning, the rancher's spouse strolled to the rear of the peafowl while his rear was open. And from the rear, she observed what everybody from the front had overlooked. The rear was spectacular, but the creature behind it was tiny and average, and not nearly as impressive as the presentation. He gazed at Schiff. You have been opening your rear for 7 years, Senator. The Russia probe, the impeachment, the reprimand, the broadcast spots, the soliciting, all plumes. Gorgeous, vibrant plumes. Another delay. Today, America strolled to the rear of the peafowl. He positioned both palms flat upon the desk. No further inquiries, Mr. Chairman. The session chamber remained in stillness for 8 complete seconds post-Kennedy concluding. Chairman Grassley gazed toward the testimony table. Schiff's judicial advisor was tilting into his hearing, murmuring desperately. Schiff's stance, which had endured during a couple of hours of interrogation like a dam holding against climbing tides, had sunk. Trapezius muscles dropped, backbone curved, the mathematical exactness of his morning arrival currently something slacker and less clear. Senator Schiff, Grassley stated, "Do you desire to reply?" Schiff cleared his throat, tweaked his cravat, stared at the lenses, all of them aimed at him, all of them in crisp clarity, all of them anticipating. Mr. Chairman, I trust this proceeding has displayed precisely the type of institutional politicization I detailed in my introductory speech. I anticipate discussing these issues via the proper avenues. It was the reply of a guy who had practiced a dozen diverse variants of this instance and picked the one that expressed the least. He collected his documents more sluggishly than he had entered, his personnel creating a silent border around him, and walked toward the door. Journalists blocked him in the hallway. Senator, will you publish your loan documents? Senator, did you realize the prank dialers were fraudulent prior to your personnel pursuing them? Senator, do you repent, terming the reprimand a mark of distinction? Schiff continued strolling. His public relations chief moved between him and the lenses. The senator will release a declaration later today. The declaration, when it arrived 4 hours subsequently, contained 3 sections. It portrayed the proceeding as a partisan activity intended to divert from the genuine dangers to American liberty. It did not tackle the Russia-proof chronology. It did not tackle the invented record. It did not tackle the joke conversation. It did not tackle the loan documents. It did not tackle Ed Buck. 3 sections of emptiness. Once more, the identical tactic he had applied following every scandal: broad indignation, targeted quiet, the belief that the media cycle would progress prior to anybody detecting he had not addressed the query. This occasion, the media cycle did not progress. The web, in the meantime, was already done viewing. The 2 properties, 1 autograph snippet, reached 38 million clicks in the initial 24 hours. The P-file comparison was spread so pervasively that by evening, right-wing social networks had embraced the P-file icon as code for Schiff. Peacock Senator trended for 4 days. Parody chairman morphed into a joke format utilized for any legislator discovered inventing matters. 2 properties, 1 autograph was stamped onto apparel inside 48 hours. Judicial commentators analyzed Kennedy's method. A past national prosecutor drafting for lawfare commented Kennedy never elevated his tone. He never deployed descriptors. He allowed the papers to inflict the harm in the quiet to provide the stress. This is how cross-interrogation functions when the interrogator has prepared and the testifier has failed to. CNN's chief legal commentator termed it the most controlled 15 minutes of legislative interrogation seen in a profession. When a Democratic consultant attempted to reshape it as Republican intimidation, the host softly noted that every paper Kennedy referenced was either a state record or Schiff's personal words. MSNBC aired a discussion that tried to frame Schiff's Russia declarations. The discussion ran 14 minutes prior to one of the speakers, an ex-Obama security official, expressing with clear unease, observed, Adam went too far with their collusion allegations. We all recognized it. Nobody stated it openly. The snippet was aired on every right-wing channel for a week. The electoral blowback accumulated with the slow, enduring pressure of liquid on rock. Within a week, Schiff's favorability score in California fell 7 points, ordinary for a freshman senator in a solid blue state, save that the drop was centered among centrists and moderate Democrats, the identical electors who had fueled his Senate win. Within 2 weeks, the DOJ probe in Maryland acquired a wave of civic focus. Bipartisan demands arose for the dedicated prosecutor to accelerate the loan investigation. 3 Democratic senators, 0 of whom would speak publicly, informed Politico that Schiff needs to tackle the property matter clearly and openly. The Senate Ethics Panel initiated a preliminary probe concerning the accuracy of Schiff's financial filings. Within a month, a primary rival emerged. Elena Castillo, an ex-assistant U.S. prosecutor from Los Angeles, Latina, 44, an attorney who had prosecuted graft cases, proclaimed an exploratory panel with a visual announcement that struck like a tactical assault. California warrants a senator who speaks the reality, not someone who informs the lenses what they desire to hear and labels it accountability. The footage reached 9 million clicks in 72 hours. Contributor funds that had been streaming to Schiff's re-election vault began silently to divert. The progressive wing rallied around Schiff, but the backing possessed the feel of duty instead of belief. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted a broad declaration regarding standing against partisan targeting without naming any of Kennedy's precise allegations. Rashida Tlaib published and then erased a defense of Schiff's Russia assertions. The deletion was captured and shared before the initial post had been active for 40 minutes. The most revealing sign arose from Schiff's personal social feeds. The guy who had constructed a nationwide image on ceaseless online warfare, who had retaliated to every Trump message, every Republican strike, every right-wing broadcast segment within minutes, went mute for 9 days. 9 days of emptiness. When he eventually published again, it was a pre-taped footage regarding ecological legislation, filmed in his Senate workspace with managed lighting and 0 live queries. The replies section, which his squad usually governed with tactical accuracy, was flooded. Every third comment cited P-fouls. Liberal media attempted the defense, but the math of the dilemma conquered them. Defending Schiff on Russia necessitated, claiming that more than circumstantial evidence didn't signify what it clearly signified. Defending the parody necessitated, claiming that inventing presidential speech during an impeachment proceeding was proper legislative conduct. Defending the loan necessitated, claiming that asserting dual Maine domiciles concurrently was a loophole, not felony. Each defense sliced a fresh gash. By the following week, the majority of liberal outlets had shifted to covering separate events entirely, which was its personal sort of judgment. Kennedy, for his portion, hosted no triumph parade. He returned to his workspace, shut the entryway, and returned to his standard routine: voter calls, committee reviews, reading The Economist. When a Louisiana reporter dialed to inquire concerning the session, Kennedy chuckled the soft chuckle of a guy who sincerely considered the inquiry pointless. "I did not execute anything spectacular," he remarked. "I recited public papers aloud." If reading a guy's personal words back to him wrecks his profession, that isn't my doing. That is the word's doing. I am merely the gentleman with the reading spectacles. In a community college political class in Lafayette, Louisiana, an instructor named Dr. Michelle Tran showcased the session for her pupils. She stopped the footage following the peafowl tale. "Why does this succeed?" she questioned the chamber. A pupil in the third row raised his palm. "Because he never instructed you what to think. He merely presented you the proof and permitted you to solve it yourself." Dr. Tran agreed. That is cross-interrogation. That is the distinction between instructing someone they are incorrect and presenting them they are incorrect. The initial one begins a fight, the latter one concludes one. In Metairie, Louisiana, a retired oil sector laborer named Boudreaux Guidry viewed the session from his lounging chair. He had backed Kennedy thrice and would back him a fourth occasion if granted the opportunity. When Kennedy displayed the loan papers side by side, Boudreaux gestured at the screen and remarked, "That is it. That is the entire matter right there. 2 sheets of documentation and the guy cannot explain either one." When the peafowl tale arrived, Boudreaux chuckled the resonant, contented chuckle of a guy who spotted the punchline before it was issued, because he had developed around males who shared tales identically that manner. "That is how you execute it," he informed his spouse. "You don't shout at them. You just present them what they committed and permit him to rest in it." His spouse, who had been consuming a periodical and not viewing the session, glanced up. "What occurred?" "Kennedy occurred," Boudreaux stated. "God favor Louisiana." She activated playback. The session resumed. 30 community college pupils observed a 74-year-old senator from Louisiana illustrate that the most potent arm in American governance isn't volume, isn't anger, isn't social platforms, and isn't wealth. It is receipts. And Senator Kennedy delivered every single one. If you traverse this deep, you have just witnessed what occurs when a guy who constructs his profession on showmanship encounters a guy who constructs his profession on readiness. One of them possessed broadcast talents. The alternative possessed a document cabinet. The document cabinet triumphed. Hit that like button if the peafowl tale caused you to rise up in your lounge room. Subscribe for additional moments where the reality defeats the narrative. Distribute this with everybody who trusts that government workers ought to be able to address queries concerning their public duty without labeling the inquiry a partisan strike. Comment below, what was your preferred portion, the more than circumstantial proof chronology? The parody revelation, the dual properties, the peafowl, inform us. Active Aver has Adam Schiff's troubles are not finished. The loan probe is active, the grand jury is convened, the ethics panel is assessing, and somewhere in Louisiana, a 74-year-old senator is likely analyzing briefing files, consuming coffee, and awaiting with the endurance of a guy who has been waiting his entire existence for the succeeding testifier, who mistakes plumes for core. God favor our service members who distinguish the variance between duty and showmanship. God favor every educator who demonstrates to their pupils that proof is more potent than speech. God favor every citizen who still trusts that a guy's words ought to align with his history, and that when they fail to, someone should speak it out loud. He arrived to scold, he arrived to reply. Only one of them possessed receipts. As they state in Louisiana, peafowls are gorgeous from the front, but reality appears the identical from every side. And Senator Kennedy, he is likely resting in his workspace exactly now, reading spectacles placed upon his nose, coffee growing chilled upon his desk, yellow legal notepad packing up with thoughts for the subsequent session. Because there is perpetually a subsequent session. And there is perpetually somebody who assumes their plumes are large enough to conceal what is behind them. They never are. Not when the guy posing the inquiries attended Oxford and converses like he attended a crawfish cookout.